the first time, it was just me and God. No mom, no dad, nobody, just me and God. And I had to wrestle with God.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey Banja, welcome back to our channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. We are a group of sisters who share our journey on our faith, beauty, makeup, fashion, and we do reviews as well. So you are most welcome. Definitely hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell so every time we upload a video, you're the first to know. And for our returning subscribers, welcome. I'm sure you're wondering from the title what I'm going to be talking about today. And this actually just came on super last minute. I was going to share something totally different. And I do want to put out a disclaimer. I am in no way, shape, or form am an expert or a professional. I am just a child of God, obeying the Lord and wanting to share what's happening in this season of my life. God has been working on me about some things and I wanted to share with you guys today. I hope that this will be of some encouragement to you, and while I may not know what may be going on in your life, God does, and I pray that He meets you at your point of need. I don't know if you know this about me, but I got saved at the age of 8. I went to a church that had a church camp, and every year around Easter in April, we would go away and just spend time with God. And it was an exciting time where we would hear preaching for days on end. And it was during that time that I got saved. Now, this is not my salvation testimony. I'll have to share that at another time. But having gotten saved at such a young age, I would say my faith had never been tried, at least not the way it has been as an adult. I would say having gotten saved so young, yes, I was shielded from a lot of things, but I also depended a lot on my parents. They basically forced us to go to church. And not only did they encourage us to go to church, but I was surrounded by people of like faith and of like mind. So I never got to have problems with maybe friends or things like that a normal teenager would experience. A little after that, I moved to the United States. I moved to the United States at the age of 16. And for the first time, I found it very difficult to balance my Christian life and also a teenager, especially since I was just coming to a new land. That's not what this conversation is about. I think that will also have to be a testimony for another day. But I talk about my life as a young Christian to say this. The last 2 years of my life have been the most trying. But in these last 2 years, I have experienced God for myself. Growing up, when I tell you my mom was the kind of person who I would have lost a pencil and she asked me, "What are you doing?" And I'm looking around, going in circles, trying to find this pencil. My mom would say, "Hey, stop. Have you prayed?" And growing up, that was the kind of atmosphere that I was surrounded by. Anytime I ever had any type of problem, my mom always redirected it. Take a minute, go and pray. Take a minute, ask God to help you. That was the kind of home that I was raised in. I was raised in a home with parents that always redirected us back to God and would always, be it an exam, be it any problem, my parents always redirected us back to God. So I I was privileged in that sense to have built that muscle very early. Fast forward to my adult life, I went on through my early 20s, just coasting through, making plenty of mistakes. And I always looked at other Christians and I would see how they just went about with so much joy and so much grace. And I always wondered, what's your secret? How are you able to be so happy in the midst of so much turmoil? And for the first time in this season of my life, God has really shown himself to me. I have never experienced God so intimately as I have the last few years. And it's in this season that I learned who God was on a personal level. After wrestling, it was just God and I. And I had to make the decision, was I going to follow God or was I going to go the other way? That I found myself having a crisis of belief and having to ask questions and having to really learn for myself who God was. And this brought me to the book of Ruth. And as I was reading through the story of Ruth, I thought, wow, this is so applicable to my life and the season that I'm going through right now. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the book of Ruth, but it's a beautiful, beautiful love story between Ruth and a man called Boaz. In the Christian circles, we always refer to Mr. Right or your spouse as my Boaz, right? So I'm sure you know how epic this love story is. But it starts out telling us about Naomi and her husband Elimelech and her 2 sons. They lived in the country of Bethlehem until they were struck by famine, which caused them to move to the country of Moab. While in Moab, Elimelech passes away, and soon after, the 2 sons get married to Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. A few years later, the 2 sons pass away as well, and Naomi is just left with her 2 daughters. The country of Moab goes through a famine as well, and she hears that the country that she used to live in before, Bethlehem, has plenty of food. So she decides to take her 2 daughters with her, and they travel back to Bethlehem. On their way to Bethlehem, Naomi realizes, what am I doing? I have these 2 women here and I don't have any children. So she tells them, go back to your families, go back to the place that you are familiar with, the people that you know. I don't have a husband, so I can't have more sons for you to marry. So you go back to your parents, go back to your families, and maybe you can even meet some men there that will marry you, and you guys are still very young. So Orpah listens and decides to go back to Moab, while Ruth fights with her mother-in-law and begs her and says, please take me with you. Your people will be my people. Where you go, I will go. And at that point, Ruth says, I'm not going to fight with you. And they continue on to Bethlehem. Once they get to Bethlehem, Naomi is she's a little bitter. In chapter 1, verse 20, people are greeting Naomi and they're so excited to see her. And Naomi tells them, please do not refer to me as Naomi, refer to me as Mara, because the Lord has dealt with me bitterly. So the story goes on, and Naomi and Ruth go back to Bethlehem, and Naomi is an old lady at this point. And Ruth is still young and full of energy. So she decides that she's going to go into the field and tries to gather some food. While there, Boaz picks her out because, of course, she is not from Bethlehem. She is a Moabite woman and she looks different. So he sees her picking food and he asks some of his servants, who is that? And they tell him who that is. And he tells his servants to leave food behind for her so she can pick it. And she returned home that day and had so much food. And her mother-in-law asked her, well, what happened? Where did you get all this food? And she narrates the story to her mother-in-law. And the story goes on and on. Her mother-in-law starts to give her instructions. The story continues to go on. You see that Boaz is actually a relative of Ruth's late husband, and he is in the line of the kinsman redeemer. A kinsman redeemer basically is a man in this time who would preserve the lineage. Reading through the book of Ruth has been so therapeutic to me because I found myself forgetting all those lessons that my mom and dad taught me when I was a little girl. I found myself, despite having spent most of my time in the church, I found myself really not knowing who God was, right? I found myself asking questions that I have never asked and really having to learn who God was. And you could look at the story of Ruth, right? And you later on learn that Jesus was born in that lineage. So had Ruth given up and Ruth turned her back on God in chapter 1 and did not surrender in chapter 1, we would not have the story of Jesus. And it made me think about myself. So this was very applicable to my life and the season that I'm in, because God reminded me that this is only a glimpse. This is only a few pages of the story that he's writing, right? God reminded me that his ways are higher than my ways. God reminded me of Isaiah 55. So the story of Ruth has been one of hope for me. The story of Ruth has been a very beautiful reminder of the character of God, and it's allowed me to trust him as he writes my story. And a wonderful lesson that I've learned is God will get you to a place where he is all that you have, because until he is all you have, you may never recognize he's all you need. And this quote literally sums up everything that I've been through. And it gives me so much joy to learn or to know that just like God made provision for Ruth and Naomi, just like God continued to make a way for Ruth and Naomi, God will do that for me, and God will certainly do that for you. And it's just been a wonderful reminder that I can trust him to write my story, because while I'm only seeing a small picture of the story, God knows the full story. Now, if you're here and you do not know Jesus as your Lord and personal Savior, please send us a message. Me and my sisters would love to talk to you and tell you more about who Jesus is. And if you're here and actually have a prayer request and you would like us to pray for you, or you'd like us to pray with you, please also send us a message. The email should be in the description box. I do hope that this has been of some encouragement to you, and I do hope that you are able to look at your trials and able to look at the season that you're in and remember that this is just a glimpse of the story that God is writing. Alright guys, until next time, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for continuing to come back and continuing to support us. Please don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you can be informed every time we upload a video. And please share this and leave us a comment. We would like to interact with you and to chat with you. All right, guys, bye.